I watched them pull up at 6:14 p.m. Leo's silver Lexus, the one I helped him pick out 3 years ago, rolled into our driveway like a victory parade. He was laughing. Actually laughing. His hand was draped casually over the steering wheel, and in the passenger seat sat her, Dahlia. 28 years old, legs for days, wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than our monthly grocery bill. But that wasn't even the worst part. Behind them, in a rented SUV, were her parents. Suitcases strapped to the roof, boxes visible through the back window. They weren't just visiting. They were moving in. I stood on the front porch of our well, my former 3-bedroom colonial in Westchester, holding a manila folder in one hand and my phone in the other. The evening air smelled like cut grass and gasoline. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but my face? Completely still. I'd practiced this. I'd rehearsed it in the mirror that morning, like I was preparing for opening night on Broadway. Leo killed the engine. The car doors opened in unison, thunk, 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 like a choreographed dance number I wasn't invited to. Dahlia stepped out first, all long limbs and confidence, flipping her hair like she was in a shampoo commercial. Her mother followed, a woman in her 50s wearing too much jewelry and an expression that said she thought she'd just won the lottery. The father, barrel-chested, sunburned, started unloading suitcases immediately, grunting as he heaved a massive duffel onto the driveway. And Leo? Leo walked toward me with his arms open wide, grinning like he'd just gotten back from Disneyland instead of a 2-week business trip to Miami with his mistress and her entire family. "Sophia," he called out, waving, "why are you standing outside? It's getting cold. Come on, let's get everyone inside." I didn't move. Dahlia walked up beside him, looping her arm through his like she had every right in the world. She looked up at the house, our house, the one I'd spent 15 years decorating, painting, filling with memories, and smiled. "It's beautiful, Leo," she cooed. "You didn't tell me it had a wraparound porch." Her mother clapped her hands together. "Oh, this is perfect. We'll put the garden furniture right over there. And maybe some hanging plants." "Excuse me." My voice cut through the air like a knife through butter. Everyone stopped talking. Dahlia's smile faltered. Leo's grin froze on his face. I stepped down from the porch, my heels clicking against the stone walkway. I walked right up to Leo and held out the manila folder. "You can't come in," I said. Leo blinked. "What?" "You can't come in," I repeated, slower this time, enunciating every syllable. "We don't live here anymore." He stared at me like I'd just started speaking Mandarin. "Sophia, what are you talking about? Stop playing around. These people have been traveling all day. Read it." I shoved the folder into his chest. He fumbled, caught it, and flipped it open. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. I watched the color drain from his face in real time, like someone had pulled a plug. "This is..." He looked up at me, then back down at the papers. "This is a closing statement." "That's right." "You sold the house?" "Yesterday. 2 p.m. All cash offer. Closed in 72 hours. I crossed my arms. The new owners take possession on Monday. That gives you about 48 hours to get your things out of the garage. I already moved mine. Silence. Dahlia's mouth fell open. Her mother looked like she'd been slapped. The father dropped the suitcase he was holding. It hit the pavement with a loud thud. Leo's hands were shaking. "You can't, Sophia. You can't just. This is our house." "Was our house?" I corrected. "Legally, it was in my name. My parents gave us the down payment, remember? You wanted to keep it separate for tax purposes." I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Turns out that was the smartest thing you ever suggested." Where his voice cracked. "Where are we supposed to go?" I tilted my head, pretending to think about it. "I don't know, Leo. Maybe Dahlia's parents' place?" "Oh wait," I glanced at the mountain of luggage on the driveway. "Looks like they were planning to move in here. Guess that's not gonna work out." Dahlia finally found her voice. "You bitch." "Careful," I said softly, taking one step closer to her. "You're standing on private property. Technically you're trespassing, and I've got the police department on speed dial." Her mouth snapped shut. Leo was still staring at the papers like they might spontaneously combust. "Sophia, please. Let's talk about this. Let's go inside and..." "There is no inside, Leo, not for you." I turned and walked back toward the porch, where my own suitcase was waiting by the front door. I picked it up, slung my purse over my shoulder, and looked back at the 4 of them standing in the driveway like statues, "Oh, and Leo?" I called out. "I canceled the credit cards, changed the bank accounts. And that business trip you told me you were taking?" I pulled out my phone and held it up. "I've got about 300 photos of you and Dahlia all over South Beach. Her parents too. Real cozy family vacation." His face went white. "My lawyer will be in touch." I walked to my car, a brand new Honda CR-V I'd bought with the money from selling his vintage motorcycle collection, and got in. I didn't look back as I started the engine. But in the rearview mirror, I saw Leo drop to his knees on the driveway, the folder of legal documents scattered around him like leaves. And I smiled. Because before they betrayed me, I was a good wife. But they made me something better. They made me smart. The smell of coffee still gets me sometimes. Not the fancy kind, the kind Leo started drinking after Dahlia came into the picture, with the oat milk and the cinnamon. No, I mean the cheap diner coffee. The kind that comes in a white mug with a chip on the rim. The kind I used to drink at 5 a.m. before my double shifts at Mount Sinai, standing at our kitchen counter in my scrubs, making Leo's breakfast before he even woke up. 25 years. That's how long I gave him. I was 23 when we met. He was 26. Charming in that reckless kind of way. Big dreams, bigger smile, zero plan. He wanted to start his own consulting firm. He had vision, he said. He just needed time. And support. And money. So I gave him all three. I worked nights at the hospital, sometimes 60, 70 hours a week, while Leo built his brand. That's what he called it, building his brand. Meanwhile, I was the one building our life. I paid the rent on our first apartment in Queens. I bought the groceries. I kept the lights on when his first business folded, and his second, and his third. When my mother died, God rest her, she left me $87,000. It wasn't much, but it was everything to me. It was her life savings, her legacy. And you know what I did with it? I put it down on this house. Leo wanted something impressive. Something in Westchester, with good schools for the kids we never ended up having. Something his colleagues would envy. So I handed over my mother's money without hesitation, and we bought this beautiful 3-bedroom colonial with the wraparound porch and the big backyard. The deed went in my name. Leo said it was smarter that way. For taxes. I believed him. God, I believed everything back then. I worked. I cleaned. I cooked every meal. I hosted every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday party for his side of the family. His mother, sweet woman, but frail, moved in with us for the last 4 years of her life. Dementia. Leo couldn't handle it. Said it stressed him out. So I bathed her. I fed her. I sat with her on the nights she didn't recognize me and held her hand until she fell asleep. Leo's sister never called to say thank you. His brother didn't visit once. But I didn't complain. Because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You carry the weight, you hold it together, you sacrifice. There was this one time maybe 6 years ago when Leo's 4th business attempt crashed. He owed $30,000 to investors. He came home pale, shaking, saying we were going to lose everything. I didn't panic. I didn't yell. I went into the bedroom, opened my jewelry box, and pulled out my mother's antique sapphire necklace, the one she wore on her wedding day. The one she told me to save for my daughter. I sold it the next morning. Leo cried when I told him. He held me and said, "I don't deserve you, Sophia." He was right. He didn't. But I stayed. I stayed because I believed in marriage. I stayed because I was loyal. And loyalty, I would learn, was the very thing they preyed on. The signs were there. I see that now. The late nights at the office that smelled like perfume instead of printer ink. The new clothes. The way he started going to the gym 5 times a week when he'd never cared about fitness before. The phone calls he'd take outside, pacing the driveway with his back to the house. And then there was Dahlia. He mentioned her casually at first. New project manager at work. Sharp. Really gets the vision. Then it was, Dahlia's helping me pitch the new client. Then, Dahlia and I are going to that conference in Miami, just business, babe. I didn't question it. Why would I? I trusted him. If you've ever given everything to someone who later turned away, you'll understand this part. You'll know what it feels like to replay every moment, every sacrifice, and wonder if you were just foolish, if kindness was just weakness in disguise. But it wasn't. And I want to thank everyone who's still listening, everyone who believes that loyalty and love still matter, even when the world tries to convince you they don't. Your support keeps stories like this alive. It reminds people like me that we're not alone. Anyway, it was 3 months before Leo's so-called business trip that I found the receipt. I was doing laundry his jeans, like always, and something fell out of the pocket, a crumpled piece of paper. I almost threw it away, but something made me unfold it. 2 plane tickets to Cancun, dated 4 months earlier. First class. I stood there in the laundry room, holding that receipt, and for the first time in 25 years, I felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart, something deeper. My faith. I didn't confront him, not yet. I folded the receipt carefully, tucked it into my purse, and went back to folding his laundry. But I stopped folding my own. I heard it through a door I wasn't supposed to open. It was a Thursday afternoon. I'd come home early from the hospital. My shift got cut because we were overstaffed. I pulled into the driveway and saw Leo's brother Jake's truck parked out front. I figured they were watching the game or something, so I came in through the side door, quiet, not wanting to interrupt. That's when I heard Jake's voice coming from Leo's office. He was on speakerphone. "Yeah, but you gotta move fast, bro," Jake was saying. "Make sure your wife signs that refinancing form before she figures it out. Dahlia wants the condo locked down before the baby comes." I froze. The baby. My hand was still on the doorknob. My purse slid off my shoulder and hit the floor, but I didn't pick it up. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Leo's voice crackled through the speaker, casual as anything. "She'll sign it. Sophia doesn't read half the stuff I put in front of her. She trusts me." They both laughed. I stood there in the hallway, 10 feet from my own kitchen, and felt my entire world tilt sideways. I didn't confront them. Not then. I walked back outside, got in my car, and sat in the driveway for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. My hands were shaking so hard I had to grip the steering wheel just to keep them still. When I finally went back inside, Jake was gone. Leo was in the living room, feet up on the coffee table, scrolling through his phone. "Hey babe," he said without looking up. "Didn't know you were home." I didn't answer. I went straight to our bedroom, locked the door, and opened the safe. The deed to the house was gone. In its place was a new document, a refinancing agreement. My name was on it, my signature. Except I'd never signed it. I held the paper up to the light. The ink was slightly smudged. The loop on the S in Sophia was wrong. I always made mine tighter. This was a forgery, a bad one. My throat closed up. I kept digging. Bank statements, loan documents, wire transfer receipts. 70,000,000. Leo had taken out a loan against the house, my house, the one I'd bought with my mother's money, and wired it to a business account belonging to Dahlia's father. The memo line said, "Investment in Martinez Family Enterprises." I sat on the floor of our bedroom, surrounded by papers, and I couldn't cry. I couldn't scream. I just sat there, numb, staring at my forged signature like it belonged to someone else. Because it did. The woman who would have signed that? She didn't exist anymore. 2 weeks later, Leo's family threw a barbecue. I didn't want to go. But Leo insisted. "It'll look bad if you're not there," he said. Like I was some kind of prop in his stage play. So I went. I brought potato salad. I smiled. I made small talk with his cousins. And then I went inside to use the bathroom. That's when I heard them. Dahlia's mother and Leo's sister were standing in the kitchen, just outside the bathroom door, laughing over glasses of white wine. "I still can't believe he's actually going through with it," Dahlia's mother said. "Oh, he is," Leo's sister replied. "He told me last week. Once the divorce is finalized, this house is going to be perfect for Dahlia and the baby. Can you imagine? 3 bedrooms, that gorgeous backyard. And that stupid woman paid for all of it." Dahlia's mother cackled. "God. Some women are just born to be used." They clinked glasses. I stood on the other side of that door, one hand pressed against the wood, my heart hammering so loud I thought they'd hear it. But they didn't. They just kept laughing. The text came 3 days before Leo left for his business trip. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. "Leo, don't wait up. I'm going with Dahlia and her family for a week. Make sure the guest rooms are clean for when we get back. Her parents are staying with us for a while." I read it twice. Then I set the phone down on the counter, very carefully, like it might explode. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, drank it, set the glass in the sink. And then I collapsed. Not dramatically. Not with screaming or tears. I just sank down onto the tile floor, my back against the cabinets, and sat there in the silence of my own house. My house, and stared at the ceiling. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that their betrayal made you question your own worth, you're not alone, you're not crazy, and you're not weak. Thank you to everyone who helps me tell these stories. Your support keeps this space alive for those who still believe that truth, somehow, will always find its way. Because it does. And mine was just beginning. I sat on that floor for maybe an hour, maybe 2. And when I finally stood up, I wasn't the same woman who'd gone down. I was someone new. Someone sharper. Someone done. The house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. I never noticed that sound before. But now, sitting alone at the kitchen table with one plate, one fork, one glass of water, it was the only thing I could hear, that low, electric buzz. It filled the whole room. I made myself dinner that first night after Leo left. Chicken breast, steamed broccoli, white rice, the same thing I'd made 1,000 times, but I only set one place. I sat down. I picked up my fork. I put it back down. I couldn't eat. The chair across from me, Leo's chair, was empty, and I kept waiting for him to walk in, smelling like cologne and lies, asking what was for dinner, but he didn't, because he was in Miami. With her. With them. I stared at that empty chair until my vision blurred. Then I got up, scraped the food into the trash, and washed the plate. I dried it. I put it back in the cabinet. I wiped down the counter. I turned off the lights. And I went to bed at 7:30 p.m. Not because I was tired, because I didn't know what else to do. The house felt different after that. It wasn't mine anymore. It was a museum of betrayal. Every room had evidence I hadn't wanted to see before. In the bedroom, I found a pair of earrings on the dresser. Small gold hoops, not mine. I picked them up, held them in my palm, and felt my stomach turn. I threw them in the trash. Then I pulled them back out and put them in a Ziploc bag. Evidence. In the bathroom there was a second toothbrush. Pink. I'd never noticed it before. I'd thought it was mine. It wasn't. In Leo's office, I found a framed photo tucked behind his desk. Him and Dahlia. She was laughing, her hand on his chest. He was looking at her the way he used to look at me. Used to. I put the photo face down and walked out. I didn't cry. I just stopped feeling. The neighbors started whispering. I'd see them when I took out the trash or brought in groceries, always alone, always one trip, always in silence. Mrs. Kowalski from next door would wave, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Tran would nod politely and look away. One afternoon, I was unloading bags from my car when I heard 2 women talking on the sidewalk. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but they weren't exactly quiet. Poor Sophia, one of them said. Leo's gone all the time now. I haven't seen him in weeks. I heard he's traveling, the other one replied, her voice dripping with meaning. Traveling. They laughed. Soft, cruel little laughs. I kept unloading groceries. Milk, bread, eggs. My hands didn't shake, my face didn't change. But inside, I felt myself shrinking. I stopped answering my phone. Leo's sister called twice. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. My coworkers texted, "You okay? Haven't seen you at the break room in a while." I replied, "Fine. Just tired." I wasn't fine, I was hollowed out, but what was I supposed to say? That my husband had forged my signature, stolen my inheritance, and was building a new life with another woman and her entire family? That I'd spent 25 years believing in something that never existed? No. So I said nothing. I went to work. I came home. I sat in the dark. If you've ever sat in a room so quiet it started to echo your thoughts, you'll understand this silence. It's not peaceful. It's suffocating. It's the kind of quiet that makes you wonder if you've disappeared entirely. Thank you to those who help keep these stories alive. Your kindness helps give voice to people who've been forgotten, who sit alone in their pain, waiting to be seen again. Because I felt invisible. One night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back at me looked older, tired. Her eyes were dull, her shoulders slumped. She looked like someone who'd given up, and I hated her. Not because she was weak, but because she wasn't the woman my mother had raised. My mother was a fighter. She worked 2 jobs after my father left. She put herself through night school. She bought her own house, raised me alone, and never once let the world see her break. And here I was, sitting in the dark, letting them win. I gripped the edge of the sink. "No," I whispered. My voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. I said it again, louder. "No." I opened the drawer beneath the sink, the junk drawer full of old receipts and rubber bands and expired coupons. And there, buried under a stack of takeout menus, was a business card. Mitchell, Lang Real Estate Law. Protecting your assets, defending your future. I'd met the attorney David Lang 2 years ago at the hospital. He'd come in with chest pain. Turned out to be a panic attack. I'd stayed with him, talked him through it, brought him water. Before he left, he'd handed me his card. "If you ever need help," he'd said, "call me." I'd tucked it in the drawer and forgotten about it. Until now? I held the card up to the light, turned it over. Read it again. Protecting your assets, defending your future. I looked back at the mirror, at the woman I didn't recognize, and I made a choice. I wasn't going to break. I was going to rise. The law office smelled like old paper and cold coffee. I sat across from David Lang in a leather chair that creaked every time I moved. He had a manila folder open in front of him, thick with documents. He hadn't said anything yet, just kept flipping through pages, his jaw tightening with every one. Finally, he looked up. "Mrs. Brennan," he said slowly, "how much of this did you know?" "None of it." He nodded, like he'd expected that answer. "Your husband filed preliminary divorce documents 3 weeks ago. Did you know that?" My hands went cold. "No." "He claimed you were mentally unstable, unfit to manage finances. He requested full control of all marital assets, including the house." David slid a paper across the desk. "He also filed a restraining order petition, said you were emotionally volatile and a danger to yourself." I stared at the document. My name was on it, but the woman described in those words, paranoid, irrational, erratic, wasn't me. It was a ghost, a lie he'd built to bury me. "He wanted the house," I whispered. "Not just the house." David pulled out another stack of papers. "He refinanced it without your knowledge, took out a $700,000 loan, and wired the money to a business owned by Dahlia Martinez's father. That loan? Legally, you're liable for half of it." The room tilted. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice shaking. "They wanted my house, my money, my dignity, and they wanted me to pay for it." David didn't answer. He didn't need to. He reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a photograph. It was Leo, Dahlia, her parents. They were standing in front of a sleek glass condo building in Miami, all of them smiling, holding champagne glasses. In Leo's hand was a folder labeled "Closing Documents." "This was taken 2 weeks ago," David said quietly. "They used your house as collateral to buy that condo. Once the divorce went through, they planned to sell your home and split the proceeds." I looked at the photo for a long time. Leo's arm was around Dahlia's waist. Her mother was laughing. Her father had his hand on Leo's shoulder like they were old friends. They looked so happy. I set the photo down carefully. My hands weren't shaking anymore. "They really thought I was weak," I said. David leaned forward. His voice was steady, firm. "Then let's show them who you really are. If you've ever found truth in the quiet moments after pain, you know what this part feels like. It's not relief. Not yet. It's clarity. Cold, sharp, undeniable clarity. Thank you to everyone who supports these stories. Your kindness keeps hope alive for people still finding their voice after betrayal." I looked at David Lang and said, "What do I need to do?" He smiled, not a warm smile, a fighter's smile. "First," he said, "we prove the forgery, then we freeze the loan, then we file for fraud." And then he tapped the photo of Leo and Dahlia. "We take everything back." I nodded. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than pain. I felt power. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that screams or throws things or makes a scene. The quiet kind. The kind that moves in silence. The kind that wins. I stood up, smoothed my jacket, and looked David Lang in the eye. "Let's begin." There comes a point when silence stops, meaning defeat. It becomes preparation. I sat in the kitchen the morning after my meeting with David Lang, staring at my laptop screen. The house was so quiet I could hear the furnace click on in the basement. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, casting thin gold lines across the table. My coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but I hadn't moved. I was done moving for other people. Now, I was moving for me. I opened the bank account first, the joint checking account Leo and I had shared for 25 years. I scrolled through the transactions slowly, methodically. $1,200 to a restaurant in Miami, $850 at a jewelry store, $3,400 for business expenses that lined up perfectly with the dates he was supposedly working late. I took a screenshot of every single one. Then I transferred my half into a new account. One Leo didn't know existed, one with only my name on it. Each keystroke felt like cutting a chain. Next, I canceled the credit cards, the ones tied to my name, the ones Leo had been using like an ATM. I called the company, explained that the cards had been compromised, and requested immediate closure. "Are you sure, ma'am?" the woman on the phone asked. "Your husband is listed as an authorized user." "I'm sure." She paused. "Okay. They'll be deactivated within the hour." I hung up. No argument, no warning. Just action. For years, I mistook generosity for love. Now, I'm learning the quiet math of self-respect. I spent the next 3 days gathering evidence like I was building a case for trial. Because I was. I printed out the forged refinancing documents. I saved the voice message from Leo's brother. "Make sure your wife signs that refinancing form before she figures it out." I took photos of the wire transfer receipts showing $700,000 sent to Dahlia's father's business. I dug out my mother's will, the bank statements from her estate, the receipt showing I'd paid 90% of the down payment on this house. Every piece of paper was another brick in the wall I was building between me and them. I worked at the kitchen table methodically like a surgeon. No tears, no rage, just focus. At one point my phone buzzed, a text from Leo. "Leo, hey babe, my card got declined at dinner, can you check the account?" I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I set the phone face down on the table and went back to work. It's funny how silence can sound like thunder when guilt starts to echo. The real estate agent's name was Marissa Chen. She was sharp, efficient, and didn't ask unnecessary questions. "You want to sell the house," she said, looking at the deed David Lang had provided. "And you want to do it fast." "Yes. Your husband doesn't know?" "He doesn't need to." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I can work with that." Within 48 hours, she'd lined up 3 potential buyers, all cash offers, no contingencies. They wanted to close within a week. I chose the highest bid, $1.2 million. David Lang reviewed the paperwork, confirmed the deed was legally mine, and gave me the green light. I signed. Marissa shook my hand. "Congratulations, Mrs. Brennan. The house officially transfers Tuesday morning." I didn't smile. I just nodded. Because this wasn't a celebration. It was justice. I started packing that night. Slowly, deliberately. Every item I touched was a decision. Keep or leave. My mother's china? Keep. The wedding album? Leave. My favorite books? Keep. The framed photos of Leo and me on vacation? Leave. I packed 3 suitcases, not because I didn't have more, but because I didn't need more. Each zipper I pulled closed felt like sealing a chapter. Leo called twice while I was packing. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Sophia, what the hell is going on? My cards aren't working. The bank says the account's been frozen. Call me back, now." His voice was sharp, panicked. I deleted the message and kept folding clothes. They taught me that love meant giving. Today I'm teaching myself that love can also mean stopping. The morning the sale closed, I stood in the living room one last time. The movers had already taken my things to a storage unit in Brooklyn. The house was empty now, just bare walls and echoes. I walked through each room slowly, saying goodbye to the life I thought I'd built here. The kitchen where I'd made 1,000 dinners. The bedroom where I'd cried myself to sleep. The office where Leo had plotted to steal everything from me. I didn't feel sad. I felt free. My phone buzzed. A text from David Lang. "David. Wire transfer confirmed. $1.2 million deposited into your account. Congratulations." I looked out the front window. The driveway was empty. The mailbox still had our name on it for now. I stepped outside, locked the door, and dropped the keys into an envelope addressed to the new owners. Then I got in my car and drove away. For the first time in 25 years, I didn't look back. For the first time, I didn't need them to hear me. My silence had already spoken. I watched them pull up at 6:14 p.m. Leo's silver Lexus rolled into the driveway like a parade float. He stepped out first, grinning, stretching his arms like he'd just come back from a spa weekend. Dahlia emerged from the passenger seat in designer sunglasses, her hair blowing in the breeze like she was auditioning for a shampoo commercial. Then came her parents. Her father, stocky, sunburned, smug, started unloading suitcases from the rented SUV. Her mother stood beside him, surveying the house like she was already planning which room would be hers. I stood on the porch, holding a manila folder, my purse slung over my shoulder. Waiting. Leo spotted me and waved. "Sophia, why are you standing outside? Come on, let's get everyone inside. It's getting cold." I didn't move. Dahlia slipped her arm through his and smiled up at the house. "It's beautiful, Leo. You didn't tell me it had such a big porch." Her mother clapped her hands together. "Oh, this is perfect. We can put some hanging plants over there." "Excuse me." My voice cut through the air like a blade. Everyone stopped. Leo blinked. "What?" I stepped down from the porch, my heels clicking against the stone. I walked straight up to him and held out the folder. "You can't come in." He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "Sophia, what are you talking about? Stop playing around. We don't live here anymore." Silence. Leo's smile faltered. "What?" "Read it." I pushed the folder into his chest. He fumbled with it, opened it, and his eyes scanned the first page. I watched the color drain from his face. His voice cracked. "This is a closing statement." "That's right. You sold the house?" "Yesterday. 2 p.m. All cash offer. Closed in 72 hours. I crossed my arms. "The new owners take possession Monday morning. You have 48 hours to get your things out of the garage." Dahlia's mouth fell open. Her father dropped the suitcase he was holding. It hit the pavement with a dull thud. Leo's hands were shaking. "You can't, Sophia. You can't just— This is our house." "Was our house?" I corrected. "Legally, it was in my name. My parents gave us the down payment. You wanted to keep it separate for tax purposes, remember?" I smiled. It wasn't kind. Turns out that was the smartest thing you ever suggested. Dahlia's father stepped forward, his face red. "We were promised a room. A home. You can't just— By Leo," I said calmly. "Not by me." Leo lunged toward me. His finger pointed at my face. "Sophia, stop this right now." I stepped back. My voice didn't waver. "Touch me, Leo, and I'll add assault to the fraud charges." He froze. I reached into my purse and pulled out a flash drive. I held it up between two fingers. "This," I said, "contains every piece of evidence my lawyer needs. The forged refinancing documents, the $700,000 wire transfer to Dahlia's father's business, the voice message from your brother, the photos of you four in Miami, holding closing documents for a condo you bought with my money." Leo's face went white. "I filed for divorce this morning," I continued. "On grounds of fraud, adultery, and financial coercion. My lawyer will be in touch." Dahlia finally found her voice. "You bitch." I turned to her slowly. "Careful," I said softly. "You're standing on private property. And I've got the police on speed dial." Her mouth snapped shut. I looked at all four of them, Leo, Dahlia, her parents standing in the driveway surrounded by their suitcases like refugees from their own lies. And I felt nothing. No rage, no sadness. Just clarity. "You thought I was weak," I said quietly. "You thought I'd never find out. You thought I'd just disappear." I picked up my suitcase from the porch and slung my purse over my shoulder. But I didn't. I walked past them, heading toward my car. Leo's voice cracked behind me. "Sophia, please, where are we supposed to go?" I stopped, turned. "I don't know, Leo. Maybe ask Dahlia's parents." I glanced at the pile of luggage. Oh wait, looks like they don't have a place either. I opened my car door. "Enjoy your stay at the nearest motel," I said. "It's all you can afford now." I got in, started the engine, and as I pulled out of the driveway, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. Leo was on his knees, the folder of legal documents scattered around him like fallen leaves. Dahlia stood frozen, her sunglasses crooked on her face. Her parents stared at the house they'd never live in. And I smiled. Not because I'd hurt them, but because I'd finally stopped letting them hurt me. I drove away. And I didn't look back. After the verdict, silence became my favorite sound. It was the sound of justice finally breathing. I didn't go back to the house. There was nothing left there for me. Instead, I rented a small one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, just me, a futon, and a window that looked out over the park. It was quiet, clean, mine. For the first time in 25 years, I slept through the night. I didn't call Leo. I didn't check his social media. I didn't ask mutual friends what he was doing or where he'd gone. I didn't need to. Because the truth has a way of echoing. It started 3 days after I drove away. The bank called Leo. I know this because David Lang told me they'd contacted him too, trying to locate me as a cosigner on the fraudulent loan. David sent them the forged documents, the evidence of Leo's signature manipulation, and a formal letter stating I was not legally liable. The bank didn't care about Leo's excuses. They wanted their $700,000 back. Immediately. Leo didn't have it. The money was gone wired to Dahlia's father's investment firm, which turned out to be little more than a shell company that collapsed the moment the funds dried up. Dahlia's father had spent it on the Miami condo, on furniture, on cars, on a lifestyle he thought Leo's stolen wealth would sustain forever. When the bank came calling, Dahlia's family scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Her father claimed he'd been misled. Her mother suddenly couldn't remember signing any paperwork. And Dahlia? Dahlia threw her suitcase at Leo's feet in the parking lot of a budget inn off Route 9 and said, loud enough for the entire motel to hear, "You promised me a house. You gave me a disaster." Then she got in an Uber and left. Leo tried calling me after that. 17 times in one night. I let every single call go to voicemail, then I blocked his number. I didn't need to ruin them. Their lies had already done that. Word travels fast in Westchester. By the end of the month, everyone knew. Leo Hayes, the charming consultant, the man with the big plans and the bigger smile, had committed fraud. He'd forged his wife's signature, stolen her inheritance, and tried to abandon her for a woman half his age. People I barely knew started reaching out. Neighbors, former co-workers, even Leo's own sister sent me a text. "I'm so sorry, Sophia. I didn't know. If I had known..." I didn't respond. Because the truth is, some of them did know. Or at least they suspected. But it was easier to look the other way. Easier to smile at the barbecue and pretend everything was fine. Now they couldn't. Leo lost his consulting clients. One by one, they dropped him. His reputation, his brand, the thing he'd spent decades building, crumbled in a matter of weeks. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he'd taken a job at a car dealership in Yonkers, selling used Hondas on commission. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt free. Dahlia moved back in with her parents. The condo in Miami? Foreclosed. The dream of the blended family living in my house? Gone. Her mother, who'd laughed so loudly at that barbecue about how some women are just born to be used, stopped showing her face in public. I heard she started shopping 2 towns over, avoiding anyone who might recognize her. Dahlia's father tried to sue Leo for breach of contract. The case was thrown out in less than a week. They used to whisper that I'd lost my mind. Now they avoided their own reflections. I went back to the old neighborhood once. Not to the house. I had no interest in seeing it again. But I drove past it on my way to visit a friend. The new owners had already moved in. There were toys in the yard. A bike leaning against the garage. A wreath on the front door. It looked like a home. And I was glad. Because it was never supposed to be a monument to my suffering. It was just a house. And now, it belonged to people who would fill it with something better than lies. I kept driving. 6 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Park Slope when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, but something made me open it. Unknown, Sophia. It's Leo. Please, I just want to talk. I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve it, but... I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger. But because I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his regret. I didn't need anything from him at all. I set my phone down, picked up my book, and kept reading. Outside, the sun was shining. The street was full of people laughing, talking, living their lives. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was one of them. Not broken. Not bitter. Just here. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life has its own way of balancing the books. And mine? Mine was finally in the black. After the noise fades, what's left isn't victory, it's understanding. I sat on the fire escape of my Brooklyn apartment on a Sunday morning in late September, watching the sunrise paint the skyline in shades of pink and gold. The air was cool, the street below was quiet. A pigeon landed on the railing, bobbed its head twice, then flew away. I sipped my coffee black, no sugar, and realized something I hadn't expected. I was happy. Not the loud, celebratory kind of happy. Not the kind you post about or announce to the world. Just quiet. Steady. Real. For the first time in decades, I wasn't waiting for someone else to make me feel whole. I already was. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday. I signed them at my kitchen table, alone, with a pen my mother had given me years ago. It still had her initials engraved on the side, E.M. Eleanor Morgan. I thought about her as I wrote my name. About how she'd worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads after my father left. How she'd saved every dollar she could so I'd have something when she was gone. She gave me that house. And I protected it. I slid the papers into an envelope, sealed it, and set it by the door. Leo got nothing. No house, no money, no access to my inheritance, just a fraud investigation on his record and a reputation that would follow him for the rest of his life. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. Justice isn't about watching them fall, it's about standing again without hate. I used to believe love meant giving everything. I used to think that if I just worked harder, sacrificed more, loved louder, it would be enough, that eventually people would see my worth and treat me accordingly. But that's not how it works. Because love isn't a currency. You can't buy it with sacrifice, you can't earn it by shrinking yourself. And you can't keep it by staying silent while people take pieces of you and call it devotion. I learned that the hard way. Now I know love also means knowing when to stop. When to say, this isn't for me anymore. When to walk away, even if it hurts, because staying would hurt more. It's not cruelty. It's clarity. And clarity, I've learned, is the kindest thing you can give yourself. There was a moment, a few weeks after everything settled, when I found myself standing in front of my mother's grave. I hadn't been there in years. Life, Leo. Work. Everything had gotten in the way. But that afternoon I drove out to the cemetery in Queens, bought a small bouquet of daisies from a bodega on the corner, and knelt in front of her headstone. Eleanor Morgan. 1948, 2012. Beloved Mother. I set the flowers down and sat in the grass, my back against the cold stone. I did it, Ma, I whispered. I kept the house safe. I didn't let them take it. The wind rustled through the trees, a crow called out somewhere in the distance. I closed my eyes. I know you would have told me to fight sooner. You would have seen through Leo from day one. I laughed softly. But I had to learn it my own way. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, just being. And then I said the thing I'd been carrying for months. I forgive him, Ma, not because he deserves it, but because I deserve peace. The words felt strange at first, heavy, but as they left my mouth, something inside me loosened. Forgiveness wasn't about Leo. It was about me. It was about choosing to let go of the weight I'd been carrying, the anger, the humiliation, the betrayal, and deciding that my future mattered more than his past. Justice gave me back my name. But peace gave me back myself. If you've ever lost yourself trying to love someone who only saw your worth in numbers, I hope my story reminds you. It's never too late to choose yourself. Thank you for keeping these stories alive, stories where justice doesn't shout at heels. I stood up, brushed the grass off my jeans, and walked back to my car. On the drive home, I stopped at a bakery I used to love when I was a kid. I bought a slice of strawberry cheesecake and ate it in the parking lot, windows down, sunlight streaming in. It was perfect. Not because it was fancy, not because anyone was there to share it with me, but because I chose it. For me. Just because I wanted it. And that, I realized, was freedom. That night I stood on my fire escape again, looking out over the city. The lights were coming on, cars honked, people laughed somewhere below. Life, messy and loud and beautiful, was happening all around me. And I was part of it again. Not as someone's wife. Not as someone's victim. Just as Sophia. I smiled. Not a sad smile. Not a bitter one. Just a smile. Because I finally understood what my mother had been trying to teach me all along. Kindness without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. And I was done surrendering. I took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and whispered into the night. I didn't need to destroy anyone. I only needed to stop letting them destroy me. The city hummed below, and I was home.